So today my talk is basically three-part. People always ask me why Yale has so many Chinese language books. So first part, I will briefly talk about the history of the Chinese collection at Yale University. Then I will talk about the two items in this exhibit. One is a drinking card of illustrating Daoist immortal, the 列僊酒牌. And the second one, the ancient Chinese navigation maps, 中国古航海图. Many people doesn't know Yale University Library is actually the first major university in the US to collect Chinese language book. It started with an unexpected letter from China in 1849. The sender was the gentleman on the right, Samuel Wells Williams. He is the American missionary printer, a diplomat, a former diplomat, and then later in 1877, he became the inaugural professor of Chinese language and literature at Yale. He is also the first one got this endowed professorship of Chinese study in the US. So on the left-hand side, you see this is an aerogram. For most of people probably don't know this. It not used a lot right now. It's actually a piece of paper. You know, one side is like the cover of an envelope. The other side, you write a letter on the other side. So now you see this is the sender, the Samuel Wells Williams from Canton, China, March 26, 1849. It's about Chinese book for Yale College Library. At that time, Yale Library is called Yale College Library. So it was sent to Edward C. Herrick, who is a librarian for Yale College at that time. So you see the New Haven. So the letter, in this letter, Samuel Wells Williams wrote, there are 6 titles of the traditional Chinese stitch-bounded books, we call the 线装书, was sent to Yale. They are including the following 6 titles: Law of China, a Chinese dictionary, 4 books, 5 classic, catalog of the Imperial Library, and the place of weaving and agriculture. The total is like 90 volumes, and Samuel Wells Williams didn't forget to say this is cost Yale Library $9.50. If you want to receive them, you have to pay the $1 shipping to the shipping company. So this letter actually started the American University Library to collecting Chinese language book. Most of people probably haven't seen what the Chinese book look like. This is the one of them. It's the Imperial Core Catalog. It's actually called translated into English like Imperial Commission Abridged Catalog of the Emperor of 4 Treasures. So you can see here, there's a Yale College Library, August 1849. I was able to identify 4 of them among the 6 titles. The Chinese law and the other one is the weaving and agriculture is probably lost. We at least have 4 of them in the collection right now. One of them, the 5 classic, Wu Jing, is in Beinecke collection. Whenever we talk about Yale in China, we simply couldn't miss Mr. Yongwen. Most of people know Yongwen is the first Chinese citizen graduated from Yale in 1854. But most of people doesn't know is that Yongwen actually served as a librarian for 2 years when he was a student here. He worked for a fraternity library for 2 years, and he actually gave the first book to Yale Library, edition of the 三国演义, the Romance of 3 Kingdoms in 1854. So Yongwen actually gave the 2 major donations to the Yale Library, which laid the foundation for the Chinese collection. In 1878, he gave more than 1,000 books to Yale but he is not simply just gave to Yale. He actually, this is one of the letter in 1877, February 26, 1877. Yongwen sent this letter to the university librarian at that time called Edison Van Nan. Most of people doesn't know Mr. Van Nan also knows about Chinese. He was the person, actually, the first instructor offer Chinese class in the US. So in this letter, Yongwen talked about the professorship at Yale, the first Chinese study professorship at Yale. In order to get his book, Yale has to do the first to establish this professorship. And the most interesting in the on-campus, people always say Yongwen threatened to withdraw his donation to give another library in Massachusetts. Okay, so you see, this is the key words. He once want to give the book to another library in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Of course, it works. Finally, the Yale College decided to take the donation. So the second letter is in here. May 29th, 1878, Yongwen, as promised, he sent 4 crates of a Chinese book to Yale. So that really started the Chinese collection at Yale. This is a list of Yongwen's list of the donation. If you haven't seen the Chinese writing before, you probably should know that Chinese writing is from top to bottom, from right to left. So in this one, this is actually Yongwen's own writing. You can find this list actually from Yale Library digital collection. So this is 4 boxes, the first box, second, third, and the fourth. The total volume is 1,280. Yongwen's worked as a librarian for 2 years. He knows how to make a gift. As we work in the library, we're usually expecting the donor give us an inventory. This is a perfect one for 19th century. You have the title. It has how many volume. This is like the Chinese book is unlike the Western type book. They usually in one of the box for Han. So Yongwen lists here, for example, like this title, there's 20 Han, there's 20 small boxes with 140 volumes in there. So this is one of the major collection major donation actually our first major donation we received, and then we started the collection at Yale. Yongwen passed away in 1912. Before he passed away, he gave his remaining Chinese book even more than the first time to Yale in 1911. People usually saw this is a walk into the Sterling Memorial Library and saw there are ancient writing system on the top of the main entrance. The second from the right is Chinese. It's from one of the calligraphy inscription. The inscription is from one of Yongwen's calligraphy collection, one of the books he gave to the library, and it was made to the top of the main entrance. It's a famous Chinese calligrapher, Yan Zhenqing. The Yan style is bold and powerful. So next time, if you have a chance to visit Yale Library or enter through the main entrance, the second from the left, the writing is Chinese and is from Yongwen. Then I'd like to spend a little bit time talking about Chinese rare book at Beinecke. We usually call Chinese rare book is for books printed or produced in China before 1795, the year of Qianlong Emperor rule 60, the 60 years of Qianlong Emperor rule. But since the older Chinese book is hard to preserve, now lots of the library, including Yale, we put some of the book produced before 1911, 1912 as a Chinese rare book. So it used to be Yale East Asia Library have a special collection room, but in summer of 2014, because the consideration of the temperature and the humidity control, about 500 titles is about 12,000 volumes of Chinese books were transferred from Sterling to Beinecke. someone once asked me how that make this Chinese collection, rare book collection ranking in the US. I would say probably number 5, number 6 among the major library in the United States. The most important, the core collection for the Chinese rare book collection is the historical novel printed during the late Ming to early Qing dynasty, especially 16 to 18th century. We have one of the very famous Hong Lou Meng Cheng Yi Ben. It's like the Dream of Red Chamber, the second Chenggao edition. This is, if you have chance, the people keep talking among the scholar, and this is a wooden movable type books, and it's very rare. It's actually very rare, and the scholar study the Red Chamber always mention this one, and I got scholar contact me all the time about this, and I hope this book can be digitized in the near future. Another one is recently a faculty in Beijing University, Beida, wrote an article about a 1591 edition of the Romance of Three Kingdoms, 三国演义. That's another very edition with beautiful illustration from our collection. So we are very strong in this area. Some of them we acquire from a collector in Taiwan, and the other is the donation from like faculty and alumni. So in addition to the rare historical fiction, we have a series of the major Songyuan edition Buddhist canons, from the Dahe Ningguozang to the Pilu, Chongning, Jisha, quite a few of them. I think most of the university in the US only have a few of them. We have more than that. Another is most of the library collecting the local gazetteer. Yale is very strong on Shanxi area, and we also have some rare maps. One of them we will see is today's, several of them, actually 4 of them. And all of this collection, they are from some like Yongwing. Yongwing gave several the so-called imperial edition, Neifuben or Wingdianben, and Samuel Wales Williams and his son, Frederick Wales Williams, and Edwin Beinecke has to give 1 book for Emperor Kangxi's Northern Expedition, and another is a Yale master alumni, Xiang Xikong, who is the brother-in-law of Chiang Kai-shek. That's the set you saw on the left-hand side. The one usually Chinese book was shown horizontally instead of like vertically. This one is especially, you see some of them is shelved horizontally because this one is especially, we don't have that much room. This picture was taken before they've been transferred to Beinecke. So actually the one shelved horizontally is the gift from Kong Xiangxi. It's a Chen Tangwen, a complete collection of Tang prose. It has 100 bucks, 1,000 volumes. So it's one of our biggest set. And also a faculty called George Alexander Kennedy, who is actually the founding person for the Chinese language program, East Asian language program on campus, on Yale campus. Also, he invented the Yale romanization scheme. And Arthur and Mary Wright, they joined to Yale History Department from Stanford in 1959. Arthur is a leading scholar in Tang history and also the Chinese Buddhism. Mary Wright is modern China. Her famous book is Hongzhi Restoration. And Mary Wright, another important thing about her, she is the first female faculty received tenure and the first female faculty become a full professor. So it's also in Chinese study. Then I will talk about the first item for the exhibit. The painter is called Ren Xiong. He passed away pretty young. It's called 列僊酒牌. 列僊means Daoist it's immortals, 酒牌 drinking cars. It's first produced in China, 1854, roughly Xianfeng 4th year. So you see on the left, this is Ren Xiong's calligraphy. This is his personal seal. Weichang is his name, also known as Weichang. So Ren Xiong Weichang. So this is one of the collector seal. This is Ren Xiong's personal self-portrait. Usually he has a very short life. He passed away when he was 34 years old. This is the self-portrait is from the collection of the Palace Museum in Beijing. You can actually Google it, use Ren Xiong. Of course, you have to use Chinese character. Ren Xiong 自画像. You should be able to get a high resolution image from the Palace Museum. So Ren Xiong was born in a very poor family in Xiaoshan. If you don't know Xiaoshan, where is Xiaoshan? Xiaoshan is very close to Hangzhou. If you travel to Hangzhou, you have to land in the international airport. The international airport is in Xiaoshan, is in Zhejiang province. And you will see quite a few people from this area, the so-called Shanghai School of Painting. He was first studying painting with his father, Ren Xiong, and a local painter. And one of his close friends once commented about Ren Xiong. He has an uncompromised temperament. He said Weichang was adventuresome for his youth, and his painting style never followed convention. He was fond of portraying eccentric and even ugly figure. So that irritated the local painter, his master. So he was kicking out of the studio. But if you look his self-portraiting, you can feel he looked sick, right? He passed away when he was 34. He got a tuberculosis. He was probably, when he do this painting, he was probably very sick at that time. And also at the same time, China is in trouble. The Taiping Rebellion is in this the area. Taiping Rebellion is a civil civil unrest. People, or you can say it's a revolution, a civil war. 20 million people were killed, and is a political turmoil, and lots of people lost their family. And Ren Xiong is close to Nanjing, so he felt uncertainty about his future and the future of China, because at the same time foreign invasion. He was influenced by two of his patrons and a very good friend. One is Zhou Xian and Yao Xie, because he found people always wondering, he's poor, how come he has learned painting? Actually help the two persons, Zhou Xian and Yao Xie, actually helping a lot. Through them, he has a chance to learn the some of the very treasure of painting from the past. He was especially influenced by a late Ming, early Qing artist called Chen Hongshou, also known as Chen Laolian, the old lotus, especially on figure painting and the drinking car. He's one of the founder for the Shanghai School of Painting. The Shanghai School painting is not specific in certain style, but it's rather, a group of a painter. They live around the Shanghai area. James Cahill, a very famous Chinese art historian in US, once commended him as the most innovative of 19th century artists, and one of the brilliantly versatile master of recent Chinese painting. Since this is a block print, the printer is very important. The painter is very important, but the person carved the wood block is also important. So Cai Zhaoshu is a carver. He also comes from Xiaoshan, Zhejiang area, the same hometown as Ren Xiong. he is very, very famous on wood block and bamboo carving. So if you Google his name, you probably first saw is a lot of bamboo carving. He collaborated with Ren Xiong because he knows him well. He actually do 4 albums with Ren Xiong. One is the one in Beinecke exhibit. There are another 3, the biography of Yu Yue sages, and the biography of swordsmen, and the biography of Lugli scholar and hermits. Yale has several other editions of this, in addition to the one at the exhibit. Cai Zhaochu spent like 5 months to carve the drinking car album. So he also wrote an epilogue for it. You see, this is another portrait painting. It's from the Zhoushan City Museum in Zhejiang. This is actually painted by Ren Xiong's son. The 列僊酒牌, the drinking cars album, is actually produced because the celebration of Ren Xiong's son, him, Ren Yu, his 1 month after he was born, the 满月酒. So this is especially interesting. Ren Xiong, the Ren family, has 3 very outstanding painters. One is Ren Xiong himself, then Ren Yu is his son, and Ren Xiong is his younger brother. There is another, people always say the Shanghai school painting has 4 Ren. The last Ren is Ren Xi, who is also known as Ren Bonian, is actually his student. So I talked several times about the wood block printing. How is actually wood block printing was made? So I found this is pretty useful in one of this website. So the first is the text or the painting was put on the paper, drawn on the paper. Then the paper was glued onto the block. Then with knife, characters are carved. Then wood block is inked and covered with sheet of paper. So if you got the first printing, it's look more legible, is probably the best in quality. Then the block used over and over again, the image getting fade away. So the later edition, it doesn't look that good. So the Ren Xiong's album being reprinted many times, I think. Beinecke's edition is probably not the original 40 copies, but it's one of the very early one. And some of the other we have is probably a later one. So you can tell the difference after you saw some of this image. This is actually the image I took in 2015, 16, a while ago, because we haven't digitized this album. This album was first printed in 1854, and the Ren Xiong was painted those cards in 1853. And only 40 copies of this album was produced at the Ren Xiong's own expense for the celebration of his son's turning to 1 month old. Various edition was produced from this wood block, and the card is used for drinking game intended to raise the spirit of the guests and urge them to drink more wine at a feast. Each card is accompanied by a brief poetic inscription and an instruction to drink wine. So there are 3 key elements for the drinking card set. One is the figure, the Daoist, one of the Daoist immortal. Then the second is a poetic inscription, something connected with the legend, the story, or the work of these this figure. Then the third is the instruction of the drinking wine. So this is a combination of painting, calligraphy, carving, and the literature and history, religion, and the geography and the folklore. So this is the table of content with the 48 Daoist immortals. Many of them are listed in Han Dynasty's 列仙传, is a biography for immortal. There are 48 figures, and 8 of them are female goddess. So this is the first one, Laozi. I think many people probably heard about him before. The legendary Daoist philosopher who is the author of the Tao Te Ching classic of the way. So this image is the only one I have from the Beinecke edition. It is a high resolution, very nice. So you can see the detailed works of the painting and the carving. So in this one, is talking about the most senior person in the group to drink, because Laozi is a senior person figure, always referred as a more senior person. So the most senior person in the group to drink. The second one is Chang'e. Most of people know the mooncake, the Middle Autumn Festival. So it's Chang'e, the moon goddess. So people always refer Chang'e is the most pretty person in the world at that time. So in this drinking instruction is the most exceptional good-looking person to drink. And the drinking game, they also have assigned somebody as a referee to make sure the rule can implement it. This one is probably not so difficult. Everybody probably trying to drink a cup of wine. Everyone want to be the most good-looking person. Ge Hong is the Daoist philosopher in East Jin dynasty, and he is also of the列僊酒牌, another biography of Daoist immortals. He is famous for friend with high officials. So in this, if someone got this card, you know, if a person with who befriend with government official to drink. So if you are drinking this in Washington, D.C., many people are going to drink with this. Mao Yujiang is a very interesting character. It's a female immortal of the Warring State period. The legend said she was a palace servant during the Qing dynasty under Qin Shi Huang, the first empire of unified China. He escaped when Qin collapsed to the mountain. And when some hunter found him and he didn't wear anything, he has a fur all over her body, and she ate pine leaves, and she's agile. She can gliding on the top of the trees. And the hunter trying to manage to call her, and she is a female, and she has a fur all over her body, so you can see this one. The next one is Qin Gao, is another immortal of the Warring State. The legend is that he rode a red cart. So you see here is a cart in here. So the drinking rule is the person is actually punished. The person just ate the fish, so you have to drink a big cup, 大杯, because it insulted Miss Qin Gao. Guang Chenzi is a recluse who lived in a stone cave of Mount Hongtong, and because he's a recluse, so the drinking rule is actually as a person sit quietly to drink. So this is again try to engage everyone to the feast, to the party, and raise their spirit. The second, do I have any? Oh, I could not have. The second one is about the 中國古航海圖. I first saw this one, even I put the date 1800 to 1841, but the map is actually comes more earlier, some copy from earlier edition. I first saw this one is 2014 when a Chinese, a prominent Chinese scholar from Peking University to evaluate our map collection. And I had a time to work with him, and this is the first time I saw this one. Before we see this atlas, I want to show you what's the traditionally, quote unquote, traditionally called as a Chinese map. This is a map we display in the last Beinecke exhibit. It's supposed to be a Chinese version of global map. It's called the capital edition. It's called 金版天文地图. It's capital edition of a complete map of the world based on astronomy. This is like a global map, a two smaller one. This is like center for the Middle Kingdom, China. So if we zoom in, you see the coastal area. This is related to the atlas we are in exhibit right now. You see, this is like Korea, Japan, and this is the traveling. There is many islands, but it's not very practical for navigation. It's just a display for the geographic area. So you see from here to the coastal, like Zhejiang, Fujian, this is Taiwan, this is Guangzhou, Guangdong, and Hainandao to Vietnam, to Thailand, and this is like India, to going up to, going up to Europe and the Near East. The next one is another map. It's actually painted on a silk. It's also from the Beinecke collection. It's a land map. So you see the perspective is on land. If you zoom in, you see it's pretty, it's very much like a landscape painting. I learned from Professor Xiong, the scholar visited us. He told me usually you won't see this kind of map only if you are in the Palace Museum in Beijing or the National Palace Museum in Taipei. So this is for emperor to view. It's more like the jurisdiction of this Jiangxi Yuanzhoufu. The third one is the most relevant to our atlas. It's a map of Haitan Dao. Haitan Dao is in Fujian province, and it is a very important harbor. It's used especially for military purpose. So when we zoom in, you see this is the headquarters of the Haitan garrison, and it listed all the military deployment, and it's still from the land perspective. It's not from the sea to look these islands, you cannot navigation through like this map. So after we see the three different ones, we get into the one in exhibit. So you see the first one is the cover. Yale map collection actually got this one from 1959. It was founded by a Yale PhD student when he was graduated, Professor Lihongsqi in Taiwan in 1974. He found this book in map collection, but the books the atlas never been noticed until he published an article in 1997, and in early 2000s, scholars started in China and Taiwan and Hong Kong, started a lot of discussion, publication about this map. This is actually a map copied from the Lenin to early Qing. It's much earlier than the day we listed it on the catalog is 1800 to 1844. So the atlas contains 122 Chinese navigation maps. It's based on the shape of mountain and flows of currents. It's a unique genre of the map. A very rare, very few, and only like 2 or 3 left in the world. This white, and it's a black and white. It's not colorful. And they recorded how the Chinese sailor navigated the coastal area from as far away as Japan's west, in the northern part of China, to the Xian Gulf in Thailand during the early 19th century. The sailor counting on the compass, examining the mud of the seafloor and the seawater, measuring the water depths, and observing the star and the contour of the coast and nearby island. This is the so-called one of the scholars just published a book about this in 2018. He used Miben. Miben is a secret book because you don't usually share with people. If you you just give your son with the same last name. You don't give your son-in-law in China. So it's a secret edition. I think other than there is one of the concerns probably during that period of time, many pirates in the coastal area. So it's for personal safety, that might be one reason. So this is the most valuable for this item is there is a bibliographic note in this atlas. It explains how big is this ship, 400 and between 400 to 500 tons, and where it sails and how it was in here. It was captured during the 1841 by the Royal Navy carrot during the first Opium War. So it detailed how, where, and how the Chinese sailor used the junk for trade. It also mentioned they use compass for navigation, and also what's the impact to once, because the Western influence to the Chinese to the map making, because once you saw the map, that there is no altitude, longitude, there's no detail. It's basically based on the mountain shape, water current. So I make this this from Google Map. It's pretty rough, like how the ship was traveling, doing trade. It's as north as the Korea, and this is China, and a little bit Japan, and south the coastal area, then to Southeast Asia. Basically, there are 3 sets of the maps. One is from China, especially from Fuzhou, Guangdong to Beinan. The second set of map is on the northern bound. It's from Fujian, Guangdong to northern part of China, and including sub-road to Korea and Japan. The third one is much smaller one. It's in Southeast Asia from Vietnam to Thailand, near to Bangkok. I put a purple area, purple line here because there is no map covering from Thailand to Singapore. If you remember, it was saying in a bibliographic note saying it's actually traveled from northern part of the Japan, as well as Japan, to northern part of China to Singapore, but actually the atlas is not including anything about Singapore. So this is the Chinese compass. The compass is they're very different from the traditional Western one. They use the 12 earth branch and the 8 heaven stand and the 4 trigram. This is the first one. I picked several of them. This is one of them. It's a northern part of China. It's a Liaodong one. It's close to Huludao. So you see how the Chinese sailor measuring the depths of water. They use this character tuo. Tuo is like a pheasant. It's about 6 feet. In Chinese text, is if you put your arm, both arm, the length is like this. Is 1 tuo, so it's about 6 feet. So this is in close to Huludao. So if you can read Chinese, here's Huludao. There is where you can dock the ship, for the best location of dock ship. And this is some of the store, the business, the market. This is another one, is in Fujian province in Jinmen. So you see the mountain is Taiyushan. They use geng. Geng is watches for distance and time of traveling. So you see it put like a 2 geng is like each geng is like 2.4 hours, and it's about 60 Chinese li, and it's about 30 kilometers. It's a highly controversial one because the wind and the water current is not necessary every time. You can travel the same distance within hours. This is another one. It's about the Haitan Dao, the Haitan Island. It's a third map we saw. It's actually from different angle. So it's the back and forth of the travel from different location, and in different angle, you look the Haitan Dao in different shape. Then this is the most interesting one. This is Pratas Island, the Dongsha Dao. If you look the Google map, Google, you see Google Earth actually. It's very similar. You know, one is like probably early 19th century, and this is like last week. You can tell it's very much look alike. And it's a mention about the Spratly Island, the South China Sea, and this is considered one of a very dangerous road. This is another one. It's actually, the number is 1R. It's somewhere in Vietnam. Is either one of them, scholar debate, and I have different opinion. The most interesting one is here. It mentioned about pay respect before the voyager to one of the Chinese sea goddess, Mazu. And when we will safely return, you worship Mazu again. And this map, it mentioned the ship, the junk. Actually, I was struggling to how to translate it because a different scholar have a different idea of how this ship look like. But I end up this might be just a two-masted boat, and is still, you know, undecided. People don't actually agree with each other. The most interesting part, because a lot of the language recorded here is not the traditional Mandarin. It's actually one of, some people say it's probably one of the southern Ming dialect, Minanyu. So I saw some of the Taiwanese scholars explain one thing, and some people from different places think differently. So this is the only map in this atlas without any note or writing, and nobody knows actually where is this. And this is one of the map we finally see the boat. It's in Hainan Island. It's in China. It's based on this this mountain, so we can see this from Hainan Island. And I actually most interesting is about this boat. So I look at other collection. I once taught a class for Yale Young Global Scholar, and I found one of this in Beinecke collection. Is old, in the 1795 books. Actually, I have this illustration, but this has a 3 masts. And this is a much beautiful one. It's from the National Palace Museum in Taipei. It's a 1817 Chinese Tong'an Chuan, the Tong'an boat. This is much closer to us. It's a Chinese junk. Was 3 masts, 700 to 720 to 800 tons. Fuzhou Chinese trading junk sails from China around the Cape of Good Hope to the United States and Britain between 1846 and 1848. So this one is about 800. So the one in our atlas is probably a half or 2/3 of this size. So you can also find it from Google it from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I hope my my talk can give you some interest about these 2 very interesting items in from the Beinecke Library. Thank you.